Hello tacticians! The follow-up to my How to Fix Ultramarines video took a little longer than I originally expected, because, well, I've been rather demotivated to work on it, busy with other things, and also sorta waiting to see how the Mythic update is going to shape up. A small heads up, as I brushed off Calgar's buff when dissing the Ultramarines, so I shall brush off Abaddon's when dissing the Black Legion. That all said, it is possible that the mythic relics that I haven't seen yet do address some of the issues I'll be talking about, and if that is the case, well, go me, I guess. But now, let's get down to business. Angrax. Angrax is the archetypal Terminator tank of Tacticus. Slow, but compensating for that with Deep Strike, which is usually a liability when used by the AI, as it will try to put him as close to the action as possible, and as such get him killed basically for free. Generally a gambit when used by the player in PvP, but potentially a massive effort saver in wave modes, when you can put him next to an enemy deployment point to auto-slap the reinforcements with his passive. Feel free to check out my Lucius LRE Alpha Track showcase video for practical example, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Angrax's normal damage output is also a bit on the lower end, even when you get him to bounce between enemies to trigger his passive. My suggestions for improving Angrax are to give him Rapid Assault, so that he doesn't have to break formation with Deep Strike at the start of the fight, and yes, to make his initial charge into active more ouchy. And to make his passive trigger not only on enemies moving away from him, but also on enemies moving to him. Basically, giving him an infinite melee overwatch and turning him into the angry honey badger he is supposed to be. Extra hilarious in combination with the Black Templar melee NPCs that duck away after hitting their target. I can never remember which ones exactly they are. Okay, that covers Angrax. Let's move on to Volk. Volk is the Black Legion's pseudo-sniper suffering from the same speed problem as Certus, which is considerable considering his sheer girth, but somehow he's also squishier than Certus? Also, his damage output is very RNG dependent. When he crit chains and his passive procs, he's alright. When he doesn't and it doesn't, you will be reenacting the Kirk Yell scene from Star Trek II, Wrath of Volk. But, to be fair and to break my intro disclaimer, with Abaddon's buff he does good work in the Guild Wars, on an offense team at least. My suggestions for improving Volk are to give him Overwatch and Crushing Blow, because he doesn't seem like someone who'd just calmly stand by when an enemy comes into sight, and because, just look at him, he's a freaking beefcake! And to raise his health by about 50%, which would make him comparable to Ragnar, because, just look at him, he's a freaking beefcake! Some extra armor would also be warranted, I think. Other than that, maybe changing the interaction between his abilities from active no hablo passive to active always hablo passive would work, because as it is now, his active is best used to spread suppression rather than for damage, because it doesn't benefit from buffs, unlike his normal attacks. That should make Volk a bit more interesting to deploy, so now let's have a look at Archimatos. Archimatos is the original DPS, tank and healer for Black Legion, as his Smite's Splash can also proc the Black Legion trait for up to 4 different attacks, all of which roll for crits separately, giving him a prodigious AoE potential, if you feel lucky, punk, which can allow him to spawn a good amount of distractions for the enemy in the form of bloodletters, and with the 1.31 update, blue horrors. However, he generally needs to be overleveled and over-equipped for this, because his attack stat is on the lower side, and at least the bloodletters are just laughably weak. My suggestions for improving Archimatos would be to slightly increase his base attack and to allow the summons spawned via his passive to attack on spawning if they have a target in range, like Snotflogas Grots do. I leave up to you whether you take my word that I came up with this one before I read about the relic giving him a vaguely similar effect or not. I also suggest considering changing his active to always spawn the full amount of blood letters available, which is now reduced to 6 from 7 at Legendary, instead of stopping the chain once the target has died. As it is now, the active ability is best used at a target that will survive it, to provide bloodies to soak hits on the enemy turn rather than to provide damage. And in fact, you may want to keep it at the lowest level of a new rarity tier for a while to get more summons to clear the Cadia campaign stages. Okay, I don't think Arch needs much more, so let's check out Haarken. Haarken seems alright now, with the still relatively recent buff that gave him some more survivability and synergy with himself. His passive now finally triggers from battle fatigue, which he causes. For newer players, originally it didn't used to. The one suggestion I have is to make his active also suppress everything within 2 hexes of the primary target on top of the battle fatigue triggering. A little shock and awe as he whispers of the impending doom and that kinda thing, to give even the heroes pause. With Haarken out of the way, we can move on to the one, to the only, to the Abigail, the disappointment! Abaddon is plain and simple underwhelming in Tacticus. His Terminator armor and Resilient barely keep him alive because his armor stat is too low, and his passive kinda sucks compared to similar buffers. His active used to be one of the hardest hitting abilities in Tacticus, but now that it doesn't work with Eldrion's buff, it's pure meh, and doesn't usually even extend his life unless it's used at the end of a duel. My suggestions to unfuck Abaddon are to increase his armor to be at least on par with Angrax. Then improve the damage bonus from his passive to at least the same value as Calgar's for non-Imperials, and give this effect a range of at least 2. If you're going to keep the value low, or lower than Calgar's, then give it outright infinite range. Then, change the passive's LTGB proccing twice effect to flat out adding a hit to all chaos attacks and abilities on the field. Both of these effects should also affect chaos abilities, including Volk's active. I also have an upgrade to his active in mind. Have it recharge when Abaddon begins his turn below 50% HP. If you think that's broken, well, newsflash, unkillability in a duel has been a thing since Jad was introduced. And in the lore, Abaddon has more plot armor than Siafa's Kane. He killed Sigismund, come on, like, really? Really? Well, so I think this tracks. Well, that's all the current Black Legion heroes covered, so let's have a look at the Forgefiend. If anything, the Forgefiend needs a nerf. Its active is a one-size-fits-your-mama dildo for any and all summons in the game, making it one of the few viable ways to deal with the Belisarius Call and 10 Gida raids, and extremely nifty against Sibyl, against the Thousand Suns, and against the Tau side bosses at the very least. While its passive can block off paths to allow for delaying tactics or outright infinite kiting on many of the maps where you can use the Machines of War, while still causing damage with fire ticks, making it the deciding factor in so many tournament arena games that it doesn't really make sense to bring any other machine. I honestly don't know how to fix the Forgefiend, and I'd probably be going against my own interests if I came up with any suggestions for it, because I've also become reliant on it, which I am ashamed for. At least the mythic ability Snowprint gave it, which is just another nonsensical power creep in my opinion, is a defensive one, rather than an offensive one. And, ironically enough, it somewhat mitigates the opponent's Forgefiend in the TA. Dramatic pause. And that's all I got today. Let me know your opinion on these ideas in the comments, and if you have any cool ones of your own, feel free to share those too. And if you really like any of them, you could also point Snowprint towards the video. Not like they give a grot, but it's the thought that counts. At any rate, I want to thank you for listening to my ramblings, and I'll see you again when I have something to share. Until then, have a good time, Tactician!